This is an awesome 1960s Standel Studio XV amplifier, but the vibrato setting is so incredibly sensitive on this thing. If you're on the left side of the number 5, you got no vibrato. If you're on the right side of number 5, you got pretty much full vibrato. We really need to change this control and make this thing more smooth so you've got a wider range of adjustments. Let's see if we can do that. Okay, so the vibrato intensity knob here, being so sensitive, just kind of bothered me. Like, you go just left of the 5 and there's no vibrato. You go hit the 5 and you start getting vibrato. You hit like 5.5 and the vibrato is really strong. I really want to stretch that out more so that it's less sensitive. So let's turn this on. So I've figured out that it seems to be a DC bias that's being controlled by this intensity knob here. It's a 25K linear pot. However, the other thing I discovered is if you put your meter on here, the numbers just constantly wobble around, and I think it's because the speed knob is controlling this also. So what I did was I just jacked the speed up to maximum, and that gives me a pretty reliable number that I can read now. So what I did was checked the middle tab here. At the lowest intensity I get 23 volts, which makes sense. This is the same as this red wire here, which goes to a 23 volt supply line. If I max out the intensity, this gray wire goes to a lower voltage of 21.7 volts, which is of course the same as this gray wire, 21.6 or 7. And if I'm somewhere in the middle, right where the vibrato is actually controllable, I'm still at about 21.7, which looks suspicious until you check this brown wire and you realize that that number actually changed. Now it's 19.4. So both numbers change as you vary the knob, which makes it a little difficult to track this down exactly, except that I know it's DC. So I went ahead and tried to assemble a table of the numbers here, 1, 4, 5, 6, and 9 on my intensity knob, because I'd like to stretch 4, 5, and 6 all the way out to 1 and 9. So that way you only vary between 4 and 6. You get a lot more control over the vibrato speed. Intensity, I mean, not the speed. So I tried to chart a bunch of, so it turns out, this is pretty nice. What I want to do is just add some buffer resistors on the top and bottom of this pot here, so that the range over which you vary it is smaller. The problem is that the range now is varying too much from 19.4 volts, well actually I guess the gray wire, from 21.6 volts to 23 volts is too much. I think it's biasing a transistor or something in here, and it only changes over a narrow range. So what we do then is add resistors in order to give us a finer control of that knob, and that's great. That's really easy to do. So I tried to estimate some values here. I came up with about 16K and 9K. So I'm going to go ahead and put like 10K and 4.7K in, just as sort of half of these values, and see if that starts to spread the knob out a little bit so that we get better control. And this intensity control doesn't matter what my circuit is. This goes straight into the block, and so I'm kind of baffled why it's such a narrow range, but it could be that there's a capacitor that just wore out in this black epoxy somewhere, or maybe all Standel amps were always this sensitive. Who knows? We'll see if we can get a little better control here. Alright, let's do a little test of the vibrato here, since we modded this control. See how it comes out. So you can hear just starts to kick in there, which is a little bit before the 4. It's nice and wavy at 5. Seems to be pretty much maxed out by 6. But there's definitely more control than before. I feel like between 4 and 6 is really where it's varying controllably. Whereas before, it was like on the left side of the 5 or on the right side of the 5. It was just ridiculously tight. So I think there's more room for us to grow here. Let's see if we can modify this a couple more times and see if we can expand the range of usefulness of this knob so it's not so sensitive. So I settled on a 10K resistor on the brown side and a 20K resistor on the red side. And now I have much wider range of intensity. I would say that after maybe 7 or 6 or 7 on the thing, it's pretty much saturated at full intensity, but the low end, you can still hear a bit even at 3. So there's definitely a lot more control now. Much more than before, so I really like the response on this control. Well, I'd say we succeeded here. Just about starts to turn on at around 2 or 3. Got a nice control here up until around 6 or 7 where it's really maxed out. 2 thumbs up. This is working great.